At our engagement party, my father leaned down to my son and said, "You're not really family. You're just her baggage." Laughter followed from the cousins. My son looked crushed. But my fiancé took one step forward and made my parents regret every word because I was engaged again and I should have been glowing. But I wasn't. Not entirely. There was this constant edge of tension I couldn't shake off, no matter how hard I tried to focus on the positives. James had proposed the week before during a quiet walk through a park near our apartment. It was thoughtful, simple, and so perfectly him. No theatrics. Just love. And my son Mason had been holding my other hand when it happened. I'd felt like maybe, finally, my life was lining up in a way that made sense. But then came the part where we had to include family. We decided on a small engagement party in James's backyard. His friends came, his sisters came, even a few of my coworkers came. Everyone was warm, laughing, hugging Mason like he was truly part of something. But I kept checking the time, waiting for the arrival that would change the energy in the worst possible way. My parents. They didn't approve of James. Said he wasn't successful enough. Said he lacked ambition. My dad called him a hobby coder. Said a real man wore a suit to work and had a title on his business card. They had met James once before and barely spoke 2 sentences to him. I knew they didn't like Mason either. Not because of anything Mason had done, but because he was a reminder of a marriage they told me I should have never had in the first place. My father still referred to my ex-husband as that mistake. When my parents walked into the party, everything in me went still. They didn't bring a gift. Didn't smile. Just nodded at people like they were inspecting a hotel lobby. My mom kissed me on the cheek like she'd been forced, and my dad didn't even look at James when I introduced him again. He glanced at the ring on my hand and said, "That it?" James just smiled, held out a drink to him. My dad didn't take it. I let it go. Tried to. Then 20 minutes in, I saw something I'll never forget. Mason was near the patio, nibbling on a cookie, chatting with one of James's nieces. My dad walked over, bent down, and said something low. Mason's face fell. Just dropped. His little fingers went slack and the cookie tumbled to the ground. He didn't say anything. Just stared at my dad, frozen. I was too far to hear, but James was closer. He heard every word. My dad said, "You're not really family. You're just her baggage." Then laughter. From 2 of my cousins who were standing nearby. They thought it was a joke. Repeated the word baggage and started laughing louder. Mason didn't get the joke. He looked over at me. Then James. James didn't wait. He stepped forward and stood in front of my dad. Everyone around fell silent. "That's the last time you'll talk to Mason like that," he said. My dad narrowed his eyes. Or what? And then James did something I never expected. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his back pocket. He'd brought it for this exact moment. He opened it and read calmly, "My name is James Parker. I'm a senior software engineer at Orion Technologies. Last quarter I made $137,000. That's not including bonuses. I don't wear a suit, but I own the patents behind 2 major systems your bank probably uses." Everyone stopped moving. My cousins were frozen. My mom blinked like she hadn't heard right. My dad didn't say anything. James folded the paper and slipped it back in his pocket. Then he picked Mason up, handed him a new cookie from the table and said, "You're the only family that matters here." The next hour was strange. My parents didn't leave, but they didn't speak again either. My cousins disappeared early. People tried to carry on with music and drinks, but the whole tone had changed. Some people came up to me afterward and told me they'd never seen someone shut down disrespect like that. But what stayed with me the most was how Mason looked at James the rest of the night. Not confused. Not hurt. Just safe. And I thought maybe this was the end of all the disapproval. It wasn't. The wedding was still ahead. And my parents hadn't played their final hand. Not yet. The days leading up to the wedding felt like I was holding my breath nonstop. After the engagement party, my parents went quiet. No comments. No criticism. No fake concern. Just silence, which somehow felt worse. 3 days before the wedding, my mom called. She didn't ask how I was. She asked if the seating chart was final. When I said yes, she paused and said she didn't think it was appropriate for her and my father to sit near James's family. Asked why. She said they didn't seem refined and that it might be embarrassing for her coworkers who were attending. I told her if she had a problem she didn't have to come. She showed up anyway. The ceremony itself was everything I wanted. Mason walked down the aisle proudly, holding the rings like they were made of glass. People smiled at him. James mouthed, "You're doing great," as he passed. I cried before I even reached the altar. For a moment nothing else mattered. Then the reception started. During cocktails I noticed my dad moving from group to group. Leaning in. Whispering. Smiling in that way he did when he thought he was being clever. I ignored it until one of my cousins pulled me aside and told me what she heard. He was saying James wouldn't last 6 months. That this marriage was a phase. That James was only playing stepdad to look good. That he was lucky I didn't expect more. I found James across the room. He already knew. He didn't look angry. He didn't look hurt. He looked done. When dinner was about to be served, James stood up and tapped his glass. I hadn't known he planned to say anything. My heart dropped. I was afraid he'd finally snap and the night would spiral. Instead he spoke calmly. He thanked everyone for coming. Thanked the people who helped with the wedding. Then he said there were rumors going around the room, and he preferred honesty over pretending everything was fine. He said some people believed he wasn't successful. That he didn't bring enough to the table. That he was taking advantage of me. Then he pulled out his phone and turned the screen outward. He said his net worth crossed 7 figures earlier that year. He said he'd never talked about money because it wasn't why he showed up every day. He showed up for me, for Mason, for the life we were building. And then he said something that made my chest tighten. Anyone who sees Mason as anything less than my son doesn't get to call themselves my family. No yelling. No drama. Just that. The room went quiet. My mom stared at her plate. My dad didn't move. The same cousins who laughed at my son weeks earlier suddenly couldn't clap fast enough. The rest of the night felt surreal. My parents were suddenly polite. Complimenting the food. Telling James they were impressed. Telling me they were proud. It felt rehearsed. Like they were scrambling to adjust. The next morning they showed up at our house unannounced. Flowers. Pastries. Apologies that sounded careful and measured. They said they wanted a fresh start. I wanted to believe them. Then my dad cleared his throat, looked at James and asked if he could talk about something financial. And that's when I realized this wasn't about fixing what they broke. It was about what they thought they could get now that they knew what James was worth. When my dad first asked for help the morning after our wedding, it came disguised as humility. He leaned in and said they'd hit a small financial snag. My mom sat next to him, nodding slowly, her coffee untouched. They made it sound like it was nothing. A little cash flow issue from a late payment, something that could happen to anyone. He said the words short-term loan like it was harmless. Like it was beneath them to even ask. I was silent. James wasn't. He said sure, let's take care of it. He didn't blink. He didn't even ask how much until later. It was $5,000. I expected my parents to leave right after. But they stayed. My mom asked Mason about preschool. My dad talked to James about lawn care. When they finally left, I stared at the empty pastry box on our table and wondered what the hell had just happened. The next week, a thank you card arrived in the mail. Thick paper. Gold trim. My mother had written, "This meant the world to us and changed how we see everything." I showed it to James. He just said, maybe this is what it takes to build bridges. Then came the next ask. It was 2 weeks later. My mom called in the middle of the day. I stepped out of work to answer, thinking maybe something was wrong. She said they were helping an old family friend pay off a medical bill and had already covered most of it, but were a bit short. It didn't sound believable, but she played it well. Said it wasn't for them. That they were just trying to do the right thing. She said they'd never ask if it weren't urgent. I told James that night, thinking he'd say no. Instead he transferred $2,800 and went back to sautéing vegetables like it didn't matter. That's generous, I said. He shrugged. They're trying. Maybe this is how they show it. After that, things changed fast. They started calling more. My mom texted photos of Mason with captions like, "Grandma loves this boy so much." My dad asked James for business advice, joked about investing in whatever magic he was doing. They invited us to Sunday dinners, where Mason always had a new toy waiting for him on his chair. It looked like a breakthrough from the outside. But something felt off to me. They had never acted like this when I was struggling. When I was newly divorced and living paycheck to paycheck, they barely returned my calls. When Mason was sick with strep for the 3rd time in a month, they said they were too busy to visit. Now they were showing up with smiles and casseroles. And then came the 3rd ask. This time it was my dad again. He said the IRS had made an error and he owed back taxes. That it was one of those dumb government mix-ups, and they just needed help covering it until they could get it appealed. The number was bigger this time. $7,000. I stared at James when he read the text. I expected hesitation. There wasn't any. He wired it the same night. I asked him if he really believed all these stories. He looked tired but calm. I don't care, he said. I've spent my life building this. Helping your parents doesn't hurt us. If it keeps things peaceful, I'm okay with it. It wasn't the peace that bothered me. It was the price of it. Because after that, the requests became more casual. Less apologetic. A home repair here. A new water heater there. An idea for a small real estate flip my dad was invited into. Every time they asked, they smiled wider the next time they saw us. And every time James said yes, they treated him a little more like the golden son-in-law they always wanted. They even stopped mentioning Mason's last name like it was something awkward. My mom started introducing him to people as their grandson, no clarification needed. And for a while I let it go. Because honestly it felt good. Having them care. Having dinners where no one whispered insults or rolled their eyes. Watching Mason get hugs instead of cold stares. But there was something heavy behind it all. A performance. A transaction. I didn't want to admit it to myself. But deep down I knew. This wasn't healing. It was a pattern. And it wasn't going to stop on its own. By the time the holidays rolled around, money wasn't even a sensitive topic between my parents and James anymore. It was casual. Almost routine. They stopped asking if they could borrow. It became when a message would pop up from my dad. Something like, "Do you have a second to process a quick wire?" Like it was a clerical task, not a favor. James still didn't say no. Not once. Every time I tried to bring it up, he'd just say it wasn't hurting us, and if this was what it took to have peace, so be it. He liked the idea of everyone getting along, and I think part of him believed the money was just a side effect of progress. That we were building something healthy. Finally. But I could feel something off in every interaction. The gratitude had started to fade. The warmth felt practiced. They were more interested in what James was working on than how Mason was doing. More curious about James's business than our marriage. And then came the dinner. It was a week before Christmas when my dad invited us over. He said he wanted to keep it small. Just close family. That's what he said. When we pulled into their driveway, there were 7 cars parked on the street. Inside, the living room was packed with people. Extended family, old friends of my parents, people I hadn't seen in over a decade. I knew instantly something was off. There were drinks, food, the fake cheer of a staged celebration. People were overly nice to James. Too many questions about his company, his income, what kind of car he drove. One even asked if he was hiring. Then my dad tapped his glass. He stood up and started talking about how family sticks together in hard times, how some people step up when others fall short, and how this year had been a turning point for him and my mom. Then it shifted. He began talking about a small real estate project. A fixer-upper that he and a friend were planning to flip for a profit. He said the only thing holding it back was timing. That they needed to move before the end of the year to secure the price. He smiled at James and said, "Which is why we're so grateful you agreed to be part of it." James's expression didn't change. Mine did. Then my dad added, "With James backing it, we're just $25,000 away from closing." Just $25,000. Like it was nothing. People in the room started nodding. Someone clapped. A relative I hadn't seen since high school leaned toward James and said, "You're a good man. Seriously generous." I wanted to crawl under the table. James stood up slowly, thanked everyone, said we'd talk about it privately, and politely steered us toward the door. My mom chased us to the front porch with a half-wrapped pie she insisted we take. The car ride home was quiet until I couldn't take it anymore. I said what I'd been holding in for months. "They're using us." James didn't argue. He said he knew. That night had made it obvious. He said helping people felt good, until it felt expected. We decided to set boundaries. Clear ones. No more big transfers. No more silent approval. The fallout came fast. 2 days later my mom called. She skipped the small talk and asked if James was still sending the money. When he said no, her tone changed immediately. She said they'd already told people he was backing the deal. That it would be embarrassing to pull out now. She hinted that it would make things awkward with the family. Then she started listing everything they'd done for us lately. All the dinners, the kind gestures, the warmth. I realized then that none of it had been unconditional. It wasn't love. It was a transaction. And now that it wasn't paying out anymore, they were panicking. But we had finally drawn a line. What I didn't expect was how fast they'd flip. How quickly the coldness would return once the money stopped flowing. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't slow. It was immediate. And it was about to get worse. After James told my mom there'd be no money for the real estate deal, we braced ourselves for some cold distance. That was expected. I figured we'd be left out of a few gatherings, maybe a few snide remarks would float around the family. I didn't care. What I didn't expect was how fast everything flipped, and how strategic the coldness would become. It was like a switch. My parents went from texting every few days to radio silence. They stopped calling to ask about Mason. No more surprise check-ins. No more invitations to dinner. My mom, who just a month ago sent Mason a care package just because, now couldn't be bothered to even send a birthday card. Then came Christmas. No call. No visit. No gift. My mom sent a mass text at 10:23 a.m. that said, "Merry Christmas from the family. Hope you're well." That was it. We spent the holiday at home, just the 3 of us. We had hot cocoa, watched Mason open his presents, and made lasagna. It should have felt cozy and peaceful. But I couldn't stop thinking about how fast my parents had erased us from their version of family. Just weeks earlier they were calling James the son they never had. No, Nothing. That night I checked their Facebook pages. Both had posted pictures from a Christmas dinner they claimed they weren't hosting. There were photos of them surrounded by cousins, aunts, people I hadn't seen in years. People they hadn't even been close to. Smiles all around, toasts, candles, the caption. Nothing more important than the people who stick by you through thick and thin. We weren't in a single photo. We weren't mentioned. I didn't say anything to James. I think he already knew. But what happened next wasn't passive. It got worse. The gossip started. My cousin Jennifer texted me out of nowhere. The same cousin who laughed when Mason was humiliated at our engagement party. She said she'd heard from my mom that James had gotten arrogant, and that I'd let money change me. That we were cutting ties with family because we thought we were better now. I didn't reply. But something about that message stayed with me. My parents weren't just punishing us with silence. They were flipping the story, painting themselves as victims. Telling people we'd turned our backs on them. It was so familiar. It's what they always did. When they lost control, they rewrote the narrative to make it look like they never wanted what they couldn't have. James sat me down one night in January and I could tell he'd been holding something in. He said he felt stupid. That he genuinely thought helping them would build something real. That maybe giving them support would melt the coldness, soften the judgment. He said he didn't even care about the money, he cared that it had all been fake. And that's when I told him what I'd been thinking for weeks. We need to stop. Completely. Not just slow down. Not make excuses. So, no more wires. No more explanations. No more soft boundaries. He agreed. Right there, no hesitation. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to take back control of the entire situation. So I started cutting them off digitally too. I unfriended them both on Facebook. I blocked their numbers. Removed them from Mason's daycare contact list. Told my cousin who had reached out that we weren't accepting any more messages being passed along. I made it clear. If they wanted to talk, it would have to be face-to-face with no requests attached. No guilt. No manipulation. They didn't show up. They didn't call. They didn't even try. I thought that would hurt more than it did. But it didn't. Because for the first time in years I wasn't living in reaction to them. I wasn't watching Mason try to win their love. I wasn't watching James carry the weight of someone else's pride. We were just us. No more pretending. No more paying for kindness. And even though I knew they'd start talking louder now, spreading their version of things even further, I didn't care. Because I wasn't listening anymore. After the block, everything went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that makes you wonder if people are okay. The kind that lets you know they've just moved on to another audience. I didn't hear from my parents. Not directly. But I didn't need to. Word traveled in its own way. My aunt called me one morning in February, said she'd heard I'd cut off all contact. She sounded hesitant, like she didn't want to get involved, but she also couldn't resist the gossip. I asked her plainly if she was calling to check in or to carry messages. She got flustered and hung up. That told me everything I needed to know. James was quieter during those weeks. Not upset. Just thoughtful. He spent more time with Mason, picked him up from daycare more often, stayed up late working on a new project he hadn't told anyone about yet. It was like he'd redirected all the energy he once spent trying to fix my family into making ours stronger. Then one evening he got a text. From an unknown number. It was my dad. All it said was, "We need to talk. It's important." James showed it to me. I told him to ignore it. He didn't. He replied, "About what?" My dad responded, "We're not asking for money. Just a conversation." We debated it for a day. Against my better judgment, we agreed to meet. Not at our house. Not theirs. Neutral ground. A coffee shop. Daytime. 1 hour max. They showed up 15 minutes late. My mom didn't say hello. She sat down, adjusted her scarf and got straight to it. My dad did most of the talking, said they were embarrassed about how things had gone, that maybe they got carried away, that they never meant to pressure us, that they missed us, that they missed Mason. I didn't say much. I just waited. Then my dad cleared his throat and said something that nearly made me laugh. He said they were in a tight spot, that he'd gotten laid off, that a small business they'd helped fund had gone under, that they had no one else to turn to. James just nodded, said, "I hear you." Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a white envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. For $20,000. My mom's eyes widened. My dad took a breath like he'd been holding it for days. James slid the envelope across the table and said, "This is the last time. No strings. No expectations. But this is it." They nodded. Thanked him. Stammered a few things about rebuilding trust and staying close. We walked out without making plans to see them again. At first I felt conflicted. I had just gotten used to the peace and here we were again dipping into something I swore we were done with. But James looked lighter afterward, like he needed to get that last part out of his system. Like giving that final check was his way of saying goodbye without slamming the door. But I wasn't done. A week later, my mom posted a photo of a family dinner with some of our distant relatives. The caption said, "You learn to cherish the people who love you unconditionally, not just when it's convenient." I didn't comment. I just opened my phone, went into my settings and blocked them both on every platform. Socials. Numbers. Everything. I even deleted the cloud album where I had photos from the wedding. I was done keeping memories of people who never really saw us as anything more than a convenience. James didn't question it. Mason didn't ask about them. Not once. Me. I finally felt still. No more reaching. No more pretending. No more waiting for people to become who they never were. We had everything we needed. And they couldn't touch any of it anymore. It's been 3 months since I blocked my parents. 3 quiet, oddly peaceful months. Mason's thriving. James just landed a new contract that's taking his work to a different level. We're focused on us, and for the first time I feel like we're not living in anyone else's shadow. Then yesterday something strange happened. A handwritten letter arrived in the mail. No return address. The handwriting was my dad's. Slanted, slightly uneven like always. My first instinct was to toss it. But curiosity won. I opened it and read it alone in the kitchen while James and Mason were out. It wasn't angry. It wasn't manipulative. It was short, barely a full page, and it started with something I never thought I'd see from him. We were wrong. He wrote that he'd realized how far they'd pushed. That the money had clouded everything. That when James cut them off, it wasn't cruelty, it was a boundary they never deserved in the first place. Then came the unexpected part. He said they were moving. Downsizing. Leaving the state. Selling the house. He said they wanted no more money, no more second chances. Just peace. The last line read, "If we never hear from you again, we understand. We just wanted to say thank you for trying even when we didn't deserve it." That was it. No ask. No bitterness. Just closure. Maybe. I don't know what to do with that yet. Part of me thinks they've finally accepted reality. That they're stepping back because they know they can't be in our lives the way they used to be. Another part of me wonders if this is just a different kind of play. A slower, more strategic one. I haven't told James yet. I want to sit with it first. But one thing is certain. I'm not opening the door again. Not right now. Some walls are there for a reason. And just because someone stops knocking doesn't mean it's safe to let them back in.